Hey there, and welcome. Today we're going to break down a term you hear on the news all the time, but maybe don't fully get, GDP. So let's jump right in and figure out how everything from your morning coffee to a massive new bridge fits into this single, super powerful number.
You know, this quote really nails it. Every single time you stream a movie, get a haircut, or just buy groceries, you're not just making a purchase. You're a player in this huge economic game, a tiny but essential piece of a giant puzzle that shows how our whole country is doing.
I mean, it seems impossible, right? How in the world can you possibly add up every single thing, from a pack of gum to the construction of a skyscraper, and boil it all down into one meaningful number? Well, believe it or not, that's exactly what GDP is designed to do.
All right, so let's get right to it. In this first part, we're going to tear apart what gross domestic product actually means, piece by piece. No more mystery.
So here's the official definition, but don't let the fancy words fool you. The core idea is actually super simple. GDP is basically the final price tag on everything a country makes and does in a certain amount of time, usually a year or a quarter. It's just a way of measuring the raw size and horsepower of an economy.
I absolutely love this analogy. Just picture a massive national shopping basket, and inside you've got every car that was built, all the software that was coded, every doctor's visit, every movie ticket sold. You get the idea. Add up the cash value of everything in that giant basket, and boom, that's the GDP.
And the name itself is kind of like a cheat sheet. Gross just means we're counting the whole grand total. Domestic is the really important one. It only counts stuff made inside a country's borders. And product means all the final goods and services. So we count the finished car, but not the steel or the tires that went into it. Why? To make sure we don't count the same thing twice. It's that simple.
Okay, so we know what it is, but so what? Why does this one number get so much attention? Well, in this next section, we'll get into why GDP is basically the economy's official report card.
And this is the perfect way to think about it. You know how a doctor checks your pulse to get a quick read on your health? Well, an economist checks a country's GDP. It's the fastest, most common way to see if the economy is thriving, struggling, or somewhere in between.
So GDP helps us answer some really big questions. If GDP is going up, it usually means more jobs, better paychecks, good stuff. It lets us see how we stack up against other big economies. And it gives governments a clue about whether their policies are actually working or just making things worse.
Now for the part that sounds a little scary, the math. But I promise, don't zone out. We're going to look at the most common way to calculate GDP, and the formula is actually way simpler than you'd think.
So this method is all about following the money. The idea is brilliant in its simplicity. Everything that gets made eventually gets bought by someone. So if we just add up all the spending in the country, we should get the total value of everything that was produced. Makes sense, right?
And here it is, the formula that basically runs our understanding of the economy. I know, it looks like a bit of alphabet soup, but each letter stands for something really straightforward. Let's break it down right now.
C is for consumption. That's you and me, buying stuff. I is for investment. That's businesses spending on new factories or tech. G is for government spending. You know, roads, schools, defense. And that last part, X minus M, is just net exports. So everything we sell to other countries minus everything we buy from them. To make this crystal clear, let's use a little made-up country called Econland.
Okay, so in Ecoland, all the people, the consumers, spent $200 billion. The businesses invested $100 billion, the government spent $150 billion, and finally, they exported $50 billion worth of stuff, but imported $40 billion, so their net is a positive $10 billion. Now, all we got to do is add it all up.
And voila, you just calculated GDP. Econland's gross domestic product is $460 billion. That single number represents the entire economic output of that whole country for a year. Pretty cool, huh?
Now, as much as we rely on GDP, it's not the whole story. It's incredibly useful, but it's really, really important to understand what this one number doesn't tell us.
This is such a critical question. I mean, if the economy is growing, that's got to be a good thing, right? More money, more jobs. But the real story is often way more complicated than just one number going up.
And this slide shows the blind spots perfectly. GDP can soar, but what if all that new money only goes to the top 1%? It also places zero value on crucial unpaid work, like volunteering or caring for a family member. And maybe most importantly, GDP doesn't care if that economic growth comes from chopping down a forest or polluting a river. It's a measure of production, not necessarily well-being, which is why some people are looking at other things like the Human Development Index.
So, with all those flaws, why do we still rely on it so heavily? Well, because even with its problems, it's still the best tool we've got for tracking the overall performance of an economy.
And that's really the bottom line. It tells us if businesses are expanding, if people feel confident enough to spend, and if our society's generating the wealth needed for things like hospitals and schools. A healthy GDP is the foundation. It's not the whole story, for sure, but it is a vital first chapter.
So I'll just leave you with this thought to chew on. We've got a great way to measure how much stuff we're making. But as we look to the future, the bigger question is becoming, what's the best way to measure what really matters? How do we measure actual progress? Thanks for tuning in to This Explainer.